Um, Whenever I took a few raisins out of my trail mix after that, a couple hours later I was right as rain. It was absolutely salt that was affecting me, and yeah, luckily I had done that. Otherwise, wouldn't have lasted a month. Um, let's see here. Do 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 do. Yeah, leg cramping in his bag sucks hard. Um, Hyponatremia. So the next day, he decides that he needs to take care of his body because that experience sucks. And he hangs out, plays air guitar with a stick and baseball, and does some singing probably, and has a good time. And he talks about lessons that he learned from his dad, which was what not to do. His dad had a pretty hard challenge in his life when he got sick with cancer, and he took to drinking, and it sounds like from Barry's perspective, kind of gave up, and that left his mom and him um, with nothing. And he himself now is very motivated to do any damn thing that he can to care for his family, and it shows in the show. Um, Comes to Jordan again. Jordan has now had a very poor night's sleep because he's worried about 600 pounds of moose meat being ravaged by anything that moves out there. He's got to worry about wolves, wolverines, and bears now, and all the rodents and the birds even wanting to peck apart everything he's got. So he now has the huge task of basically building a second shelter to keep his food in, and hanging everything in trees and smoking meat before it goes bad, because it's still, I think it's about mid 30s degrees, same temperature as your refrigerator, um, out there at that time, Fahrenheit. And it hasn't froze hard yet, so he's got to smoke things. He's got to preserve his meat, and it's a big job for an animal that big, for an individual to do that. If you have a village of people or a family, that's one thing, but for one guy to do it with a Leatherman, that's another thing. So he builds a thing called a Delkin, which is just a rodent-proof, three-legged thing. He cuts 3 trees off about head level so you can reach up there still, but then peels all the bark off of it so mice can't run up and down it. And he starts putting material up there to get everything up off the ground. And he says at some point it's not ideal to sleep with 600 pounds of meat surrounding you like you're a burrito. Um, that's kind of the situation he was in out there. Um, yeah, and he's also realizing that, oh crap, like I can't leave anymore. I have to watch this meat. I have to make sure that it's preserved and safe from scavengers. And that's, you can hear it in his voice, like he's not liking the idea of having to be tied down like that. Then it cuts to me. My one of my outdoor game cams is looking at my shelter, and still no door on there. I'm waking up in the morning. We got maybe an inch or two of snow on the ground. A lot of it's blown in my open door, and I'm making my plan for the day. I started every morning with laying in my sleeping bag, doing some stretching, doing some energy work on myself, meditating a little bit, and making my plan for the day. Being really mindful about how I was going to use my energy, and if I had any projects I wanted to do, if I had a trap I wanted to build, something I needed to engineer. It was pretty much up here before I unzipped my sleeping bag in the morning. And I got up to go pee and spend a few hours on working on my shelter, and 10 feet out my front door, Wolverine tracks in the snow. And they have a little bit of fresh snow in them. Like I said, there's about an inch of snow on the ground, and they're about half filled in with half of that snow. And I'm like, a Wolverine just was here. And at this point in the game, 3 weeks in, I haven't seen anything bigger than a squirrel. I saw 3 rabbits my entire time out there, maybe even only 2. I never saw one rabbit past day 3, and I had one squirrel. And the only time I ever saw any squirrels, I'd be probably 3/4 of a mile from camp. So there was nothing out there. I'm a hunter. I came out there with a bow, and I intended to use it. I've been quiet all this for weeks. I had not raised my voice. I am intending for big game to come out there, and I want to put an arrow in it. And this wolverine is the biggest thing that I had seen, um, you know, in weeks. So I had to do it. I had to drop everything and just take off after it. I ran back into my shelter, loaded a pack up really quick, got my archery gear, camera gear, and took off. And I took off at a near run after that wolverine to try and catch up with it. I knew it was probably an hour to 3 hours ahead of me based on how much snow was in that first track that I saw. And if you know anything about wolverines, or if you've ever tried to track one, they move like this. You know, they don't go in a straight line for anything. They do not deviate around something to make it easier on them. If there's a boulder right here and they could walk around this way or this way, they go right over the top of it. And if there's a hole that they can stick their head into to sniff around what's in there because they're hunting, then they stick their head in that. It was hard work. I tracked that wolverine for, I reckon, close to 5 miles as fast as I could track it for 3 hours. And I would still be out there tracking that wolverine to this day, I'm convinced, if the blizzard hadn't come and obliterated the tracks. But that thing took me out to, there's a peninsula to the south of the southeast of my shelter that went out for probably a full mile and had a canyony ridge kind of that ran across the top of it that wolverine went out over. And I tracked it over that ridge, back over the ridge again, back over the ridge again, around the mouth of, or around the head of the peninsula, climbed a snowy cliffside, got back up onto the canyon rim again, walked along that, and then was back on the top again, trying to keep these tracks and not lose them in the blowing snow, just hoping beyond hope that that next log had a wolverine taking a rest on the other side of it, and I would finally catch up to it and put an arrow in it. I never did. I totally blew myself out. I really was exhausted at the end of that. I'm standing up in the most exposed place it could possibly be up on this ridge line, and the weather just comes undone. And I realized I need to get my ass back to camp because it's just eating my face off. The wind is blowing hard. Luckily, I know the terrain really well, so I'm not worried at all about getting lost, but it could have whited out pretty easily there. So I get back to camp completely obliterated. Take it easy, lay down for a while, and this doesn't make it into the edit, unfortunately, but I actually rally later on and decide that I want to go harvest this barrel. There's a big black barrel that you'll see me using later on for a doorway that I had found a few days previous, a little over a half mile from my camp. This is a 55-gallon drum like the one that Michelle made her boat out of. Let me put a little wood on this fire real quick, more light. It's getting to be darker out here. Yeah, I decided the thing to do would be to hike that barrel back to camp, and luckily I bring my big pack, which I was hauling my stuff in, and figured out that the straps on that barrel, just like the way I carried my Pelican case to camp, the straps on that barrel were to the millimeter just long enough, or the straps on the pack, excuse me, the compression straps, just long enough to fit around a 50-gallon drum. And that's what I did. I strapped it on my pack, hiked it back to my place, and had a big old barrel for my brain to make puzzles with what to do with it for the rest of my time out there. There was actually 4 barrels that were in that thing, and then I found 2 other barrels. One I think had washed up on the shore, and another one was cached there. It still had kerosene in it. And I hauled those out to the beach so that production could get them out of there so that they weren't creating an oil spill on the lake. The oil industry is pretty active up in that area. I've done a lot of drilling, and people will also go out and cache drums kind of out in, wherever near their fish camp is going to be and stuff, so that they have it around. And because of that, there's a number of pretty significant environmental hazards tucked around out there, unfortunately. Get some better wood on the fire here. So yeah, I was really kind of amazed that I did bounce back like that, and I had the energy to go for that hike and haul that heavy thing around. Where else here? That's the Wolverine track. Um, yeah, they say they had cut to me talking about how there doesn't seem to be any game in my area, and that's why I absolutely have to track that wolverine. And then something in the little quotes down at the bottom of the screen says something about how I have a lack of game because of the big burn, which annoys me a little bit because I have been talking about how the burn was where you wanted to be in order to get game. The burn is where all the fresh growth was, and that's where all the animals are eating. So that's where all the animals are. I did not have, in my entire area, there was not any burn, and I really wish there had been. It would have made for a lot more large game. But the temperature drops into the 20s, and I start talking about how I have a personal theory that there's two types of people in the world. There's people that when things get hairy and go sideways, they either focus in, they become more present, or they scatter. They panic. They do something else. It's a kind of an important cleavage point in my mind of where you're at. And I don't think that it's inherent in any of us to be one or the other. I think we are able to train ourselves to be one or the other. But I've always been one of the former, somebody who really focuses in and pays attention when stuff gets crazy. Whoa. That was a weird loud noise. I wonder if you guys heard that. Cuts to Brady. And Brady has devised a little device to make a washing machine out of his pot. He coils it up on a tripod hanging from a piece of parachute cord and spins it, and all the steam shoots out of it. And he's doing his laundry, and he's bragging on how, does anybody else have a washing machine? And I had to say, yes, Brady, I did have a washing machine. I actually made one out of the backpack the smaller backpack that we wore. It was actually a dry bag. It was watertight. So what I would do was take white ashes from my fire and add ash to the water, let it soak overnight, let all the sediment settle out of it, and then take that lye water and then use that as laundry detergent, basically, with my dirty laundry. So I took all my base layers, the stuff that was next to my skin and most needed to be clean, put them in that backpack, poured water in there, and then poured that lye water in there, and then let it set for most of the afternoon while I was gone. And then I came back to it, and then I would take that bag and move it back and forth like a washing machine, an agitator, and get all the grunge and stuff out of my clothes, pour off the dirty water, put fresh water in, put it through a rinse cycle, do that again, and put it through 2 or 3 more rinse cycles, and in 10 or 15 minutes I had totally clean laundry that I didn't have to like hand manipulate the whole time. And it was awesome. I did that around 2 weeks in, and after my body had detoxed from all the fasting and the simple diet that I had, I seemingly stopped producing any body odors, and I really didn't need to clean my clothes anymore after that point, which was lucky because it got so cold that it took several days for clothes to dry out because they were frozen stiff as a board. So I didn't have to do a whole lot more of that, thankfully. But yes, I did have a washing machine as well. It worked out really well, and it was on camera, so it's unfortunate we're not seeing it. But it cuts to Nikki, and 23 days in, it's her birthday, and she makes a super cool candle out of some club moss, which is a species I never did see on my piece of land. But I thought that was really cute and fun that she decided to do that. It had been 8 days for Nikki since she had a meal with any protein in it. And she decides she needs to go out and check her snares. And sure enough, she gets a hare in one of her traps on her birthday. Super incredible gift. It was still alive. It was still caught. And they kind of cut the camera aside, but you hear a crunch. And I think what she did was grab a hold of it by its neck and break its neck with her bare hands. Pretty freaking rugged. Cuts to Wonia. It's in the low 20s outside, and she's realizing what it means to be in cold weather when you're not eating. I don't think that's something that, if you are interested in being a person who's prepared, if you're a prepper for some kind of big event, like where I live right here, this is very prime earthquake country, and we could very easily have an earthquake that takes the power out on the island for weeks, if not months. If that happens midwinter, a lot of people are going to be out with any form of heat. That becomes a really big deal if you don't have food as well, because your body generates a surprising amount of heat from not just from the calories that you consume, but from the digestion of those calories. And that was something that I knew about, but I didn't quite take it seriously until I realized that actually my negative 30-degree sleeping bag was not anywhere near warm enough out there, because I was not producing the same amount of body heat. My negative 60-degree rated boots were not warm enough out there, even though it was not anywhere near that cold. You gotta go as warm as you can with everything you got if you're not expecting to get any food in you, because you are just not going to have that kind of body heat coming at you. Out there too, sitting next to a fire, I'm about 3 feet from this fire right now. I can feel a lot of the radiant heat coming off of it. None of it gets to you up there. That just disappears into the vacuum of cold like so fast. There's like one little place where it's right here it's too hot, right here it's too cold. It's like that's what your comfort zone is. Here, my comfort zone's from like here to out here. Things really change, and until you experience them for yourself, you don't really realize that. Again, Monia's wearing that super gorgeous buckskin parka that she made herself. Cleans. She ends up getting a rabbit as well, and cleans it on a nice piece of birch bark that she made kind of a cutting board out of. It's something I wanted to comment out, because I saw her and I saw Jordan at least making some really nice stuff out of slabs of birch bark. And I had birch trees everywhere, but they were not peeling. I could not get those slabs of birch bark off of them. Most of them were too kind of mangy and not clear, lots of knots in them to have that clear birch bark in them. But that was a resource I really would have killed to have. There's no way I could have made say a moose call out of it like they both had done. Let's see here. She case skins her rabbit, which means that you instead of doing a slit right up the middle, you actually cut the backs of the legs, and then you pull the whole hide off, kind of like a sock. So you would have like essentially a puppet left over, which is what Michelle does with one of her rabbits earlier on. That you can then, what she did is cut that thing up in a spiral all the way up, and ended up with like a long piece of yarn, for lack of a better term, that she coiled up into a rope and had this rabbit skin rope that she was going to do something with in the future. I thought that was really clever. That was a new one for me. I know been at least introduced to a lot of different ways to process game and hides and all that, but that was one that I'd come across before. It was a pretty cool idea. Jordan is at his camp. Briefly, they come over to him. He's enjoying his moose kebabs. He's got a couple of big chunks of moose meat that he's got right down there in the coals, and he's a 10 out of 10. Best thing he ever tasted, it looks like. Goes back to Nikki again, eating her rabbit, the heart of the rabbit with a big thing of berries. She's filled the lid of her pot and using it as a fry pan, and just like saucing the berries with the rabbit heart in it. That looked delicious. Everybody's eating some good food. And it kind of turns to night, and she starts hearing this really sketchy, weird noise outside, like some large predator making a weird noise. And she actually goes outside and checks it out. She's pretty brave about it, and pokes her head out the door, gets her headlamp on, gets cameras going and everything. And whatever it was, it's kind of like I talked about in season 4. If you think you're going to get out of your sleeping bag and go hunt something that you hear, they heard you getting out of your sleeping bag. It's long gone. Pretty brave to go and stick her head out there. The next morning she gets up. First thing she does is go figure out what the heck that animal was and starts tracking it. She brings her axe and her bow, and finds the tracks, and she's not familiar with them. I know where Nikki actually lives, not super far from me, to the north on an island, another island up in Canada, and we don't have wolverines in this area. Wolverines are kind of a very cold weather / subalpine animal, and we live down near sea level, and she sees tracks that she thinks might be a lynx, but there's the wrong number of toes for a lynx. It's a 5-toed animal, and actually what she was tracking there was a wolverine. And if you've ever Google a wolverine sometime, or get it on YouTube or something, and listen to all the crazy noises they make, they're kind of an intense animal. But that wraps up episode 5. I hope you're enjoying my kind of like fireside chats here. I'm really enjoying reliving this whole experience and trying to pick apart what everybody else's experience is as well. I really enjoy the show for what faults it might have. There's just nothing else like it on television, and it was such a gift to be a part of season 6, to meet all the other participants who are all good friends of mine now, and to have had that experience is just really incredible. So thanks for joining me with it, and please, if you wanna see more, I'm gonna be doing more stuff on fire building and hard skills, and going on adventures, and teaching permaculture, and disaster preparedness, and all the things that I do in life for real. I'm gonna be utilizing this YouTube channel for. So I actually already have a fair amount of disaster preparedness videos up already, if you want to search around on my channel a little bit more. But please feel free to subscribe and like, and this is a brand new channel, and I could use all the help in the world to get it out there. And I'm not interested in putting out shallow material. I want to go in depth with things. I think that's what people need more days. So hope you all have a good one and be useful. Thank you.